To be our best, we need to stay up to date on the latest and greatest. That includes being equipped with prime tools and gear. That's where Shieldbox comes in. It's a monthly subscription box designed specifically for law enforcement professionals. Each month, you'll get a curated box of duty gear and supplies from industry leaders. Sign up today at theshieldbox.com and use code BLUEGRIT to save $10 on your first box.
There's so many skills that I think we don't even realize that we have.
You want to get into something different, you could train civilians on firearms or self-defense or it's all kinds of things.
Whereas there's another guy that for years he was just like obviously so burned out, and he's like, man, I just can't do anything else. I can't do anything else and make this money. And I'm like, well, one, who says you have to make the money? And two, what way is that to live? Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. All right, ladies and gents, welcome back to another episode of Blue Grit Radio. This is your host, Eric. Today I'm joined by returning guest Devonta and new guest, co-partner and co-pilot, or however you guys run it as far as welcome to the street. Vince, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you guys use the word partner? Because like business partner and also like you kind of have that like, patrol partner kind of lingo going.
I just use founder, co-founder. I think they all really apply. I don't think it really matters. That's the one that sounds good to me. So that's what I go with.
Dynamic duo.
Yeah, we've been doing founder, co-founder. Works for me.
Love it. Well, welcome, man. Today we just wanted to kind of riff on other skills, backup plans, however you want to say it. I think the working title might be backup career, because in law enforcement we get so expert at contingencies, or we should. Some of us don't. We get complacent, but yeah, it's like backup flashlights, and we learn 2 is 1, 1 is none when it comes to guns, other weapons, less lethal. Like you always have to have options and tools, and if this goes this way, let's go that way. If the suspect does X, let's do Y. If they do Z, then let's do AA, right? We keep going with it, and yet with planning, with looking at worst case scenario with our livelihoods, with our careers, cops don't like thinking about it. We don't like talking about it. Myself, towards the front of that list, admittedly, like I didn't really have much that I thought about until the last few years and trying to do some of these things, right? They're very exploratory kind of passion projects, but in working through Blue Grit, I realized that I have found confidence as a writer, stuff I hadn't really done, creative writing or any sort of thing outside of police reports for years and years. But I've also found that I can learn things. I can learn new, I suppose, activities like podcasting, and I can learn from you guys, like how to build a newsletter. And so super fun topic. And I think that is something that more cops are responsibly thinking about. Yeah. Devonta, what are your thoughts on that?
Dude, this is a subject that I am so passionate about because, obviously when you first become a cop, you don't really, all you want to do is be a cop. I remember being asked, like, do you want to be a chief? And I was like, I don't know. I just want to be a cop. Like, I just want to get out there.
Are they a cop? Are they cops still? Yeah.
But where this all changed for me is at my last department down in Georgia. Every year we had an officer who was shot or killed in the line of duty. In fact, when I was going to do my polygraph exam, right, there was an officer, Officer Chase Maddox. He died on that same day. He was shot. And that didn't really register for me then. But then later on, like seeing other officers who had passed away, or even the ones who had been shot and lived, and like how they had been shot in the finger and they couldn't work in the line of duty anymore. And the only thing that I could think was, what happens if that happened to me? How am I going to provide for my family? Like, what am I going to do? Because a lot of us just have like a high school diploma. I'm one of them. I just have a high school diploma. I don't have a degree in something else, or I do have other skills that I've developed along the way, which we're going to talk about. But there was nothing else. I was like, what do I do? And I think a lot of cops kind of find themselves in this situation. And it's something that I've thought about for years on. It's like, what do you do if you're in this situation? So it's something that I am very passionate about.
Yeah. No, that's so well put. And Also, I would have tagged you for somebody that had a couple degrees and you're working on your master's. So good for you, man. It all just
Yeah.
proves that degrees are, only what you do with them.
Yeah.
And, for so many of us, just a piece of paper. But yeah, Vince, welcome to the show, man. And, we were talking pre-recording, but you have or had, you can fill us in on that, but a business mind, and you've been doing some other things besides just your policing career. So tell us a little bit about yourself first off, a little bit of, your entry into law enforcement, because we don't know that yet. And then let's talk about that other piece.
Okay. Yeah. So I've been a police officer for 14 years in central Pennsylvania. I went to college, got a 4-year degree in criminal justice. And I'll get to that in a second. Doesn't relate to a whole lot else. And then I went straight from the police academy from college graduation to the police academy. So in Pennsylvania, you don't have to be sponsored by a department. You can pay your own way and go.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did. Completed that. It was like a 19, 20-week program. Got my first job. I've worked in a few different municipal agencies, very, very small departments, just a few people, no full-time officers type of thing, to about a mid-sized city, I guess, of about 70 officers. And now I work for back to a smaller-ish municipality. It's a big area, but my department's about 20 officers now. So that's my police background. And then there's kind of a misconception. And as Devonta was talking there, this is what I was thinking of, that we don't have any other skills. My whole career has been law enforcement. Prior to law enforcement, I was an EMT, never learned construction, never learned any of these other handy skills that you might have that you can go out and do other things with. I don't know IT. Yeah. But our job actually relates to a lot of career opportunities. We're very good communicators. We're good at thinking critically, good at managing stress. So there's a lot of things that we have, a lot of skills that we have that relate to the private sector that we don't even think about.
Such a good point. And shout out to Jess from Next Shift, but she posts on this a lot. She's like, stop saying I'm just a cop and I don't know what else I
Yes.
would do.
Yes.
And couple things, right? The first is being, we talked about and Devonta pointed out, anything can happen. We recognize that. I don't want to go down the tangent of like wills in the States. Like I was very slow to do one. And for a while, my wife and I were slow to do one because we're like, well, if something happens to us, whatever. But then we have a kid and we're like, ugh, we need to get on this. So that's a nudge for like the wellness, financial, and just planning piece. Have the uncomfortable conversations. It's not that bad. Literally, we talk about getting shot and all this stuff at work anyway, and roll call, like being safe. So let's just pull that Band-Aid off. But then like anything could happen off duty too, right? So it could be the weirdest fluke thing where something happens physically or mentally, right? And then you're like, well, shoot, like this career that I projected just isn't going to be a fit anymore. And so it is wise to think about what else we're interested in, what else we're passionate about, or what groundwork do we have in the things that Vince talked about, right? Whether it's conflict resolution, communication skills. Some of us, especially small departments, like you wear a lot of hats, and you might be trainers, you might be developing programs and getting grant funding for this thing or this product, and so project management and all these things. And I do find, you don't know what you don't know, but from rubbing elbows with a lot of my friends and family that have been in private sector and all these other industries, sometimes I think I like shortchange us in the government world because I'm like, man, we move so slow, and then my wife will be like, seriously, you think you move slow? Like we have more meetings about meetings than you do, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fair. And then hearing about nonprofit, like that's a whole nother thing from some of my friends. So all to say, don't get down on yourself or ourselves, and then recognize like what we have, and then build some momentum off of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on there with that comment. I mean, there's so many skills that I think we don't even realize that we have, right? And I think it depends. Like all this kind of depends on where you are in your career, right? If you're a veteran officer, maybe you're close to retirement, or maybe you just have more than 10 years on. You can look back on your time. Like, what did you do in law enforcement. Even if you were on patrol that entire 10 years, like Vince mentioned, there are so many skills, communication that we have to have and that they value in the private sector. And I didn't even realize this until we did our cop to corporate webinar. And we were talking with Colin Whittington. He was telling his officers, like, you have so many skills, even just training someone, right? Document all that stuff down, all these valuable skills. But for those officers who I would say are on the younger scale, who are just getting into law enforcement or haven't got into it yet, I would say learn as many skills as you can. Like, figure out what you like to do. Like, go ride along with the traffic guys to figure out if you like traffic crashes. Go ride along with the motorcycle guys. Go ride along with the narcotics guys if you can, or just explore all these things. And then whenever you decide that that's what you like, become an expert in it. Be aggressive in it. Like, get all the certifications, all the accreditations that you can, and become an expert in that one thing. And it may be something even outside of law enforcement. I have a buddy, Trevor Marlin. He was very passionate about robotics and drones. Now he's our drone guy. Anytime we have anything with drones, he was able to leverage his skills to work over in the private sector. So there's just so many things we don't even think about, because sometimes we have that limited mindset. There's so many things that we can do and so many skills that we have. We just have to sit down with that pen and paper and write them down and think about all those things that we've done and we're passionate about.
Yeah. And there's more and more coaches that work with all sorts of folks, but specifically law enforcement folks in that transition, because that can be kind of daunting, and then not knowing how to prepare a resume and how to look at jobs and articulate your experience. But I love some of the examples, like, and it's popping up into mind. So often for me, for the majority of my career, I just figured, like, well, I guess, like, there's security and there's loss prevention, asset protection, there's kind of risk and, like,
we all think at first,
executive protection, like all these, like, really, let's say, more obvious things. And some people have great careers out of that. But then there's also, as you pointed out, like traffic. Shoot, I know guys that are, retired, or they pull the pin early because it's so lucrative to do. They're like recon. They farm out to agencies, or they work for insurance companies, right? They do that. They have that knack and they love it anyway. They'd love to do that full time, not deal with all the, ancillary patrol stuff after so many years. Like, they'd actually like that, right? So there's that. There's also, you mentioned drones, and, I'm hearing about more cops that run the drone program. Then they have their own, like, their own mini fleet. And then, like, shoot, like, anyone building content, like whether it's real estate or like wedding photography, like, you need a drone these days to, like, compete. And so, like, how many people want that equipment? And you can just start your side hustle there with something that you love anyway, and it just kind of feels like you're playing around, but then extra money in the bank. So let's cut to Vince. So Vince, tell us about when or what or why you started doing stuff outside of police work.
Well, so initially, I think it was just I was sort of looking for an exit plan if I had to leave law enforcement, or if I wanted to at some point. You know how there's hills and valleys in this career. You've been doing this a long time too. So in one of my valleys, I was thinking, okay, well, what can I do here? So I ended up buying a frozen custard shop and there's a story behind that. I worked I worked for the same franchise company when I was like 16 years old. It was my first job. So when the opportunity came up at a location near me, I decided that would be a good investment. And it wasn't an exit plan per se. It was just something that I would have on the side, that whenever I retire, it's there, and it kind of runs itself for the most part. I do some things on the back end, but it's nothing too crazy, as long as you can divide up your time. But then when I started doing that, I really liked the business ownership side of life. So I started looking into other things. Now, those other things take a lot of time and money. And obviously, law enforcement career is a good career. It pays well. It's good retirement. There's health insurance, all those things to keep in mind. So I ended up kind of dedicating a lot of my time back to policing. So I have the business on the side, and I've been taking policing to a different level now, where I'm working with Devonta on the newsletter. We're doing some training, some courses. We have our roll call briefing once a month, which is essentially a really good training. It's a way to get officers together to talk about some problems we're facing in the career.
Yeah.
And now I really like that. I like the training aspect of policing, which is another option as well. If you get out of this and you decide that you want to get into something different, you could train civilians on firearms or self-defense or it's all kinds of things. To an example you guys were giving earlier, I investigate fires. So almost every fire investigator that I work with is a retired state trooper who now works for an insurance company. So whenever we get called to an incident, we investigate it as a law enforcement side, but the insurance companies, they're all sending their own people over, and their people are hired by them, and they're typically retired cops. So it's just another good example.
Yeah.
Man, you're like part trader there, man, playing firefighter sometime on the side.
What's that?
Hey, there's
you're like part trader there. You're trading the thin blue line. Don't work with the red flag.
Yeah, we have a little investigative team that handles the law enforcement side of if there's anything criminal type of thing.
There are the agencies that do both, and I'm going to shout out to my old buddy Eli. He used to work in my department, and then he moved to an agency out of state where they do like a shift or two. I forget the rotation, but
I've never heard of that. That's insane.
yeah,
That's
they
crazy.
do they do police, and then they like rotate on they sleep, and then they rotate onto in 8 hours of like fire, and then EMS. So he was like in FTO, and then he was in fire academy, and then he was in like EMS, like getting his EMT. And I was like, dude, you've moved like 2 years ago, but then you have to do all these things and shoot. And extra shout out, he started this like ice cream side hustle. So shout out to the frozen custard, but he was just messing around and just started as like a hobby because he had this firefighter-esque schedule. He started making this homemade ice cream. His family loved it. Friends loved it. Coworkers loved it. Like, dude, make more. So he was just doing that in his time off, and he's, slinging pints of homemade
another
ice cream.
correlation there we need to investigate. Fires, police work, ice cream. What's going on here with that, Vince?
So many awesome things as long as you're not lactose intolerant. Yeah, man.
I would love that. I think that EMS fire police combo, because I've done all three, and I was in a volunteer fire company whenever I was younger. Then EMS, then policing.
Maybe that's your next chapter. Well, let me ask you this, and I'm going to come back to what you just said, but I was curious because I think in this conversation of contingencies and peaks and valleys, I've once shared, especially in the last few years, is like nudging people, hey, if you feel super burned out your PD, like consider a total change of scenery, right? Like in our area, a lot of people, after they've had enough of kind of suburban policing or whatever the grind is, a lot of people kind of go out to work at like the airport, right? So they go to the port authority, and it's like a different job. And we sometimes say it really jokingly, but in another way, I'm like, cool, like you could have either just quit or you get to continue to be a first responder, serve in a different way. It feels like a different job. You're learning new things, different environment, and then you also get to keep feeding your pension, right? And so it's just another way to think about like whether you go big city to small town. What was the, if you feel comfortable sharing like the version of it, like what were some of the things that led you to change departments, Vince?
Well, it was mostly the first in Pennsylvania. I think Pennsylvania has the most police departments of any other state in the country. I'd have to double check that stat, but I'm pretty sure that that's accurate. It's a lot. It's a lot of police departments. And I started in a 5-man police department where there was a full-time chief, a full-time sergeant, and then everybody else was part-time. And we were done with work at like midnight or maybe 3 a.m. And then the state police took over the town. Not that there were any calls for them to handle, but if there were, they would handle them. So that was just not a career position for me. So I worked several part-time police department jobs until I was able to get my first full-time position. And that was with that 70-ish officer city that I worked for. And I had no problems with that place really, other than when I had this opportunity. It's just about 40 minutes away from the other place. And this one's just higher paying, better retirement. It was just a good career decision for me. And it's a little bit better morale wise. it's not as busy, not as that whenever you're very, very busy call volume wise and you're making less money. I mean, obviously there's some there's some morale issues there too sometimes. So yeah,
Sure.
this was just a better fit. And sometimes I miss the speed of the other department, but that's about it. Otherwise, this is a better fit for me.
Yes. Yes. No, thanks for sharing that. And so to go back to, what you're sharing about, the custard business. So were you an owner, or are you owner or owner operator? And like, how did you find that right balance? Because for so many people, this probably sounds super daunting, right? Like, it's daunting enough for them to run their career and then run their life and family life, and then their kids are older and activities, and then meanwhile people are listening to us and being like, dude, we don't even know how you do the things you do with like content and podcasts and newsletter and all this stuff. And then now we're trying to have people like, it's not. And so maybe I'll walk it back. It's like, I'm not trying to tell everyone to start a side hustle, but start exploring whether it's training, literally getting paid to learn more how to do better policing in like a niche. And you might really love that and just have that in your pocket. But yeah, how did you manage all that, and kind of balancing and orienting all that stuff, man?
Yeah, so I did buy it with a partner. So I have a business partner. So we at first we kind of divided up the tasks, and just for back end managerial stuff. Luckily for me, it was sort of a turnkey purchase. I had a really
Mhm.
great staff there, and they're still there. My significant other works there, so now she kind of takes care of all that management stuff that I was doing. So I don't really have to
Okay.
go there, work shifts, things like that. I just sort of manage things on the back end. So a couple hours a week, was what pretty much what I was putting in. Now, I would have liked to have been more involved, especially at first. And that was the hard thing for me. And that's why I was sort of thinking there was a time where I was like, man, if I could replace my income with this, I would do it tomorrow. And then
Mm.
I'm glad I couldn't, because I probably would have regretted that decision.
Yeah, it's an interesting twist of like, hey, why not? Like, why not find where you can start? And for you, it's recognizing, yeah, you can't bite the whole thing off. You have a business partner, and now you work with your significant other, and now you're pretty hands off, right? And so it's just trying to introduce these different ideas that we can think about. And kind of before I turn it back over to Devonte, it's like, this whole conversation made me remember 2020 policing and how everyone's heads were spinning, those that were in it. And I made a point to sit down with all my guys as part of like just what you normally would sit down with goals and stuff. But I actually asked everyone like to think about what they would do if they couldn't be a cop. And one guy it was just like, we're sitting there. He's like, I love welding. I'm like, cool. Like, my goal for you, and this is not something that's going to go in your eval. You have to report back. This is your personal life. But
Mm.
like look at welding. Like, how often, like, you got a welder at home? He's like, yeah. It's like, okay, like, try to think of something that you can do for, like either a friend or, for yourself, whether it's art or whether it's something functional. Like, try to do something like this month and then next month. And then maybe look up like, your local community colleges, like tech colleges, schools, like look at what a course would cost. I'm not telling you sign up or anything. Just look at what that program would look like. Could you manage some sort of a program, with your shift and like all that kind of stuff? So my sincere belief is that by just entertaining a little bit of that stuff, it empowers us, and it helps us recognize some sort of like personal agency, that we're not just resigned to a certain fate. Because on the other hand, and that guy's doing great. Like, I have no sense that he wants to leave police work or anything, but I'm glad we had the conversation years ago. Whereas like there's another guy that for years he was just like obviously so burned out, and he's like, man, I just can't do anything else. I can't do anything else and make this money. And I'm like, well, one, who says you have to make the money? And two, what way is that to live? And I'm not like trying to judge anybody. I'm just trying to invite people to think more like abundantly of like, okay, what do I have? Do I actually see the purpose and the abilities I have here? Or am I so burned out that like literally nothing is fruitful here except for the check? Because that's like such a
Mm.
terrible way to look at things.
Mm. That's so commendable that you did as a supervisor. And I think more supervisors should do something like that, because you don't want the officer who doesn't really want to be here. They're just stuck here just for that paycheck. So if you have the option, right, you're a much better police officer. You're like, I don't have to do this, but I choose to do this. I want to do this. I can go off and I can do welding or I can do some of these other things, but I want to be a police officer because I have this passion to serve, or for whatever your reasons are to be in law enforcement. So I think that's very commendable of you. And I think more supervisors should do that, encourage their guys. Like, what would you do? What could you do? Start thinking about these things. What could you do if you weren't working in law enforcement? And I think the purpose of this is not to just up and tell people like they need to go start a business or have an ice cream shop or do something right away, but you should take that time to like invest in yourself. One thing that I started, after being in policing for a while, that I would encourage a lot of officers to look into is like the, living by that 75-15-10 rule. You live off the 75% of your income, 10% of it you save, 15% you invest. And you invest, like, you don't have to, if you don't know anything about investing, don't go out and buy just a bunch of mutual funds, but set that money aside and buy books for yourself. Invest in yourself, invest in some of these classes, a coach or somebody else to help you kind of get those skills that you need to figure out some other things that you could be doing possibly down the line. Because even when we sat down and talked with Colin, one of the things that he mentioned is like, this is something that, you don't want to be in a position where all of a sudden you just need this job. You want to be thinking about this a few years back, a few years down the line. So give yourself time to build these skills, to figure out, what you want to do, what you could possibly do, and give yourself time to develop those skills. So start this stuff right away. Don't wait. You don't have to go out and buy a business, but start investing in yourself and learning different skills, learning the skills that you already possess, the things that you like. And then just keep your mind open. It'll just, I promise you, if you just think about that, it will come to you one day. You'll just be driving around like, what can I do? What can I do? And then it'll come to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. There's a mentor of mine that said, the three things you'll never regret investing in are your health, experience, and education. And experience for him, it's travel for a lot of people, a kind of cultural experience and just like life experience, like things and opportunities and events. But yeah, I love like how you explained education, because that doesn't mean formal education. Sometimes there's these master classes and there's courses, these online courses. And then, even a nod to that is like, I'm reminded of a guy that I was working with that actually said that he was able to, work with his local community college and recognize that a lot of his training credits through the state could contribute toward his AA. So that's like a goal that he'd been recognizing, and he can shave off a lot of time and money by recognizing so depending on your state and the course or the program, like you might have a lot of credits shaved off for something like a criminal justice degree or, societies and justice, whatever kind of liberal arts degree, more likely. So yeah, lots of opportunities, lots of different ways to look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't even have to have a business, so to speak. Like if you start investing young, like you invest in yourself to learn the skills to how to invest, and you buy mutual funds or something like that. That's something that passively you could do to build wealth, to get yourself out of law enforcement if you wish to retire early. So don't think that because we're talking about businesses that it has to necessarily be a business. There's a ton of ways out there. Just and give yourself the knowledge and the tools and be around other people who kind of think the same. I think that way. Vince think that way. And there's a lot of other cops who are out there who do think that same way.
Yeah. Yeah. Something popped up in my mind where in 2020, I started Blue Grit on Instagram largely, but I just wanted to like put out more positive content, health and wellness, the things I was really passionate about. But in that kind of experiment and journey, people were reaching out more, and I was already kind of just writing programs for people at work if they asked for it, or like giving them meal plans and things that like, some structure of information I could kind of like type out and give to them that based on our conversation. And then I did it for a few people, like actual clients, right? Kind of like a remote, trainer, coach, or just nutrition advisor, and not a nutritionist or dietitian, anything like that. So just offering that. And in that, like it wasn't about the money, but it was just more about trying to just play with something and then help somebody out that I knew personally. But in that, I realized like I did not enjoy that at all, right? Like I like talking about it. If someone hits me up like in the station and asks like what I'm doing, or if I have feedback for what they're doing or what's not working, like I'm happy to like nerd out on that. But I realized like that is not like fulfilling me. Like I could not do that for like my full-time thing. And so that was very helpful to not, find myself in a place where I had to like figure something out and then start this like, this like coaching business and being like, what am I doing? Right. So like you can do a lot of that. It's just kind of like a passion project. You don't have to have money assigned to it. You could just do it as a hobby. and then just kind of play with it. Um, I want to come back to Vince and, this next topic. I think it's hard for people because although we recognize as like a point of logic or like a theme, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And yet for so many years, to earn more, I just worked more overtime. And then we're just furthering the one thing that we're doing, which is like, our main thing. But, it's hard to walk away from that. And so speaking from my own experience, like when you have this ample overtime and then it's contributing towards, your retirement in some way, it's just hard to, kind of turn that down for the side hustle where you're making, so let's just say, assumingly at the start, so little money for your hours traded. What kind of helped you through that? Or did you just realize, Vince, because you wanted an actual contingency plan and that would be kind of a responsible way to look at things?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I was looking at it from a money standpoint at that point in time. And I'm not sure if I actually chose between overtime and the business at all. Mostly because I didn't want to work anymore. I was in that valley we were talking about earlier, and I didn't want to work any more than I had to anyway. So I was going to work for the 8 hours or 10 hours, whatever the shift was, and then I was sort of over it. I didn't want to put in more than 40 hours a week. So I was really trying to just find something that I liked doing outside of policing, and I think that's where I ended up. There, being able to figure that out and balance that. And now it's not even an issue at all because doing the training stuff and the welcome to the street stuff, I kind of found a rejuvenated interest in the police world as well. So that's super helpful. And I have plenty of help at the business, so that's not even an issue anymore.
That's a good way to look at things. I mean, it's hard for a lot of people that are just in that rut of just doing what they're doing, and the money makes it work, and the money justifies the discomfort, right? Paying it back in, and for the listeners that. I probably won't put this whole episode on video, but for the listeners, my daughter just walked in and the dog came in and just asking me like 20 questions. Like, where's mom? Like, so I'm just asking you.
We all have families and kids. We still, we're all doing
you make it work. It's the theme of this episode. Yeah.
It's all good.
Just for anybody that was wondering why I stuttered there for a second, it's because I got distracted. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard the doorknob like slowly I'm like, oh, here we go, and muted it, but delightful little daughter.
But the point is the same. What I was articulating is the same. I just I got tongue twisted there for a second.
Yeah, you're good. Your OODA loop was thrown off. Like, who's this mini person?
Honestly, I'm just still getting used to all this new stuff. Podcasting's new for me. Mm-hmm. The newsletter's new for me. And I will say this, it's difficult for police officers to put themselves out there. And I still have like horrible imposter syndrome. So, and I talked to Devonta about this all the time. So when we started doing the newsletter, that was easy because I was behind text. Nobody knew who I was. Didn't matter.
Faceless. Yeah.
Yeah. And even if my name was on a few things, like it didn't matter. Now my Instagram, I'm building my personal Instagram up. Doing the podcast, we recorded episode number 1. Devonta put it everywhere the next day, which thankfully for him, because I don't have that same type of drive to do that kind of thing, put myself out there like that. So I was sort of reliant on him to do that. But yeah, I mean, I know if it were me looking over this direction, the imposter syndrome comes from, well, like, who's this guy and why would I listen to what he has to say about policing? But honestly, you just have to take a deeper look at it and look, I think I have some things of value and some opinions of value, and I want to share that with the police community, and hopefully we can all, the three of us and everybody else that's out there doing it, can make it a better community overall.
Yep.
That's the goal.
And Vince, you bring up just such a great point. I think that holds back. We are the ones who stop ourselves before like any obstacles can have a chance to stop us. It's us. We have that imposter syndrome that we can't be this guy, we can't be this person, I can't do a business, I can't do this because I don't have all of these skills. I'm not, there's somebody out there better qualified than me. And if you just believe that and you buy into that narrative, you won't get anything done. I think, the journey of entrepreneurship, and I think all of us here can attest to this, is that you have to face your fears. Like if you want to get to the next level, you have to face your fears. Like whatever your weaknesses are, that's going to be what's holding you back. Right? If you're afraid of what other people think, then you're never going to put yourself out there. You're never going to reach that audience. If you're scared to try something different or you're a perfectionist, that's going to hold you back. So whatever your weaknesses are, when you're on this journey, don't just give up. You have to face those. You have to, first of all, identify what they are, and then figure out how to overcome them. But it's such a beautiful journey. I'm sure you've had a lot of those challenges, Eric, on with your podcast and doing all the things you've done.
Yeah. Imposter syndrome. I'm glad you brought that up. I wrote about it in an article of Police One. I got a lot of feedback, and it's usually like people like us, people that want to be our best and we want to share out and be positive, positive individuals. And that's the irony of it, right? And a lot of times people that are very self-driven and initiated, they do have that internal mechanism of like self-doubt and like, is this good enough? No, it's not, right? So I think the first time I put an article out and then, didn't get traction, and I kept sending articles out, and finally one like bit with, Police One and then Police Chief Magazine. And I was like, oh, it must have been a bad month, right? Like they didn't have anything. And it's like like this negative self-talk that was a thing. And then even, when you talk about imposter syndrome, I've put up so many defensive mechanisms internally, starting the Instagram and starting the podcast, and truly where I didn't start it to plan to monetize it. I really just did it because I thought it was purposeful, and it was taking my mind off things, and it was an outlet it had its own purposes and a little bit of, I suppose, self-discovery and how I view policing and what I wanted to put out and what kind of cop I wanted to be, or cop leader I wanted to be. But even as it grew and had traction, I was so hesitant to put any money associated with it, because the moment I did, I was worried that, man, if it doesn't make money, then I am an utter failure. Right now, it's just like a community service, right? If it's free, then there's no like nothing tying it. I'm just doing it because I do it. If I stop, I stop. Whatever. Like you're welcome for being here, kind of like for tuning in. But then once you like kind of put yourself out there to the next level, which is like, man, there's value here, a value of like not just time and attention, but your actual hard-earned cash. Like that was very uncomfortable for me, and I realized like I probably just have stuff with money just in general, just because childhood stuff. My parents arguing about money like all the freaking time. It's probably why I went to like this government job where I never really expected to make a ton of money. But you can make good money, right? And so you can toggle all these things. But I share that just because I found that when I offer these little anecdotes, usually there's somebody or somebodies that are like, holy cow, like that's me too. So again, just tying together what Vince and Devonta have offered is like, if you're doubting yourself, or you're worried about the peanut gallery, like, one, don't worry about the peanut gallery, because they're just putting out stuff that they're self-conscious about. There's always going to be that. You could be like the best street cop, head down, doing your thing, supporting your team, and somebody's going to have a problem with that and how you do it and whatever, right? They're just people like that, and we can't let our lives be governed by people like that or affecting us. Like they already creep into, our work circles and culture enough. Like we got to like take the microphone away from those people, not actively give it to them or like amplify it, which is what we do when we are self-conscious about things. Like know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and just, keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's a fear that a lot of people have. I mean, you have to face that. You just have to decide, is this what you want? Do you want more for yourself, or are you just going to be, because there's no difference. Like with our newsletter, there's guys who like you yourself, there's lieutenants, there's people with a lot more experience than what me and Vince have. There's people, we've met people who were attorneys before, but it's just, this is your idea, your dream. Are you gonna just sit there and be like, I don't have what it takes enough, or somebody's gonna criticize me enough? Like you have to want it bad enough to just be like, I'm going to take that risk. That's the difference. Like if you want that extra sense of security, you want to have that backup option, then you have to take those risks, take those chances on yourself, and invest in yourself. So
yeah, I would have got so much out of this conversation 2 years ago. So you just said about maybe you'll just, you said you'll throw out your little anecdotes, and maybe somebody out there listening, it could help. And I will say that if it was me a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I was listening to these three guys, who the heck are they, talking, I'd have been like, oh man, all of that stuff applies to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we're just cops. We're just like everyone else, right? We're sitting there. We all just decided that we were just going to take some risk. And in a culture where, social media, I don't know if I should be putting out custom content and stuff like this. We've all just decided that we were going to, we're going to take that risk.
Well,
And now
that's true. But we're also cops who, we do take ownership of our careers, I think, and we do train on our own time, invest in our own skills. I don't know what exactly you guys do, but I mean, fitness, diet, mat time, range time, dry fire time. I mean, we do these things. So we are just cops. I know you had a whole podcast about that, Eric, but but we're being the kind of cops that we want other people to be, and I think that's important too. I'm hoping that more people we kind of drag into this, the more kind of like-minded police officers we get to work with then.
Yeah. You made such a great point there. I think as you learn that on this journey is that, like, in order to be successful in all this stuff, you have to take care of yourself in all aspects of life and of your career, right? If you want to learn these other skills, and you have to take care of your physical fitness, right? You have to take care of your firearms training. Like, you have to kind of be on top of all of these things in order to take on something else or to do something else. So you made some great points there, Vince.
Yeah, a couple things. You're talking about the newsletter specifically. Oh, like, you guys are a couple cops, smaller agencies. Like, who are you? But that's exactly the power of that, because there are newsletters written by attorneys, but people may or may not want that, or they may want that cool in this corner of their inbox, but they also want the perspective and the tone of guys that are doing the job just like me in my small agency, and guys that are looking at, okay, LODD deaths, man, let's take a moment, let's look at that, and then I'll also look at some tactics and look at some lessons and takeaways that we can bring back to our crews, right? So I think that that's why I love this project, and it's generally, and sometimes my own, just trying to silence the peanut gallery. Is I don't know better. I'm on this exploration, right? I'm putting the student hat on when I have people on, and a lot of this is me thinking out loud and learning as I go, so it helps me learn. So all these conversations are for everybody, and myself included. But in that is even that notion, right? Hey, you're doing this for your own learning and to share. That is a purpose. But the more I said this and realized this about being a supervisor and a leader was the more I realized that I should just be me, but the best version of me. That's when I was a better sergeant. That's when I was a better commander. Not when I was trying to do what was predicated before me, or me trying to emulate other styles. It's no, just field training or PTO or whatever. When you have all these trainers and influences, you take what is useful to you and you discard what's not, right? A little Bruce Lee there. So there is that notion, just be your best version of you, and you will show up better, and your audience will meet you halfway, and the right people will be attracted. The wrong people won't be interested. That's totally fine. Some people want nothing to do with a podcast like this. They just want to, break down OIS videos over and over, and that's fine too. There's a different niche for that. That's not me. And so we do that dance, and we just keep learning, keep exploring, just know what your internal mechanism is, and keep exploring, stay curious, and it's all going to be good, right? Don't put that, if you are someone that puts so much pressure on yourself, know that, and then just kind of back it off, because then you realize you can learn more and have more fun with it.
Yeah, me and Vince, we use that term. I think we call it pivoting. We've had to pivot
you gotta
so
pivot.
much. You think of
It's
something
a Friends reference, right?
Yeah, you work on something for months and you put it out there, and you're and then nothing happens, right? I'm sure you've had those projects. You put stuff out there and then nothing happens. Does that mean you're a failure? No, you just need to pivot. Maybe you need to tweak something a little with that, or maybe it just wasn't a good topic. You just pivot and we go a different direction.
Or maybe you don't even like it. Maybe it's it sounds like a great idea at first, and then you start to do it and you're like, you know what? This isn't exactly what I envisioned, and let's just try this instead. And it's not even that we've started and stopped and gave up a bunch of times or anything like that. We're literally doing the same thing. We've tried different ideas that for one reason or another, we didn't like them anymore, or they didn't work out, and we just moved on to the next, but with just a little tiny pivot. It wasn't a start from scratch or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, with that, yeah, consistency. We pivoted a lot, but we've been very consistent. We release our newsletter every Sunday. So we've been very consistent. And with that, right, with making those subtle changes or making those little changes, like you get better, you figure out what works. And I think that relates to, anybody who's trying to learn something different. It's like learn that, but be consistent with it. Right. You don't need to, it's like when you get in the gym, whatever, you don't need to go lift the whole gym and just stack up plates and everything. It's just consistency. One day
That's
you
how
can
you
have a
break
great work.
yourself,
Yeah,
right?
that's how you
Like
break yourself.
that's not what to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You should focus
Mhm.
on consistency of just, okay, I'm going to be there. I'm going to show up every week or every day, whatever time you set for yourself. Just show up, even if it's just a terrible workout that day. Just show up. And so, if
Mhm.
you set your mind to do something that you're going to learn or grow or learn how to invest or start a business, just show up and just do it and try to stay consistent with it.
Yeah, I love that. And even talking about what Vince said, like starting something, it gets no traction, you pivot, right? And then
Yep.
what you just landed with Devonta is like, hey, just like put in the reps, put in the time, right? The intention, because sometimes it's just timing, right? Like you put out that article, you put out that post, and it doesn't get traction. Doesn't mean it wasn't good. It might just be like it's the timing wasn't right, and so you re-release it, or that is not for nothing. That rep is building up for the next one. Like so,
Mhm.
just like the cruddy workout where you're putting like a couple fives on the barbell and you're like, God, like don't look at me. But like someone has to start there until
Yep.
they start putting plates on, right? Like, and you're not just putting plates on overnight. And so, just like I know that you guys have field training backgrounds, like just like you want students to fail fast, learn from it, and keep moving, like keep putting those reps in because we don't want to dwell. Same thing for this, like same thing for thinking outside of police. So like if you write a article and you submit it to a publisher and you get nothing, like don't look at it as waste. Like that is going to help you build the article that does land. Or you find out that articles are not your thing, you start a podcast and it blows up, right? And then you're just commenting on YouTube or whatever. Like that's your thing. And so it's all like it's a stepping stone to the next thing as long as you have that reminder of like the abundance mindset, the growth mindset.
Yep. And that's why we're just so passionate about the subject. It just starts with the mindset. You just have to decide. It just starts with the decision. Like, hey, I want to do more for my family. Like, I would like to have a second option or give myself the options to do different things. But it all starts with that mindset. You just have to believe that this is something that you want to do and that you can do and that you're gonna do. It starts
Yeah.
all in here, all in the mind. So
Yeah. I dig it, guys. Well, please, if there's anything that you want to close with, but also please tell the audience again where they can find you guys, your newsletter, where they can subscribe, and anything else.
yeah, so you guys go check out the newsletter. Each week, it's made for cops. It's made by cops, and you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. Because we are cops, that gives us a different perspective. We understand that you guys are overwhelmed. Like you have information overload. You're going to calls after call after call. Like the last thing you want to read is like some 20-page breakdown on law enforcement and case law from some attorney. We understand that, and so we take this information, this very complex information, we make it very simple, very easy to read, and we even put in polls so you can really understand. You can ask questions, scenario questions, so you really understand the concepts. So we've really worked hard and pivoted a lot to try to make this easy to digest for cops because we understand, because we are cops. So go check out and go subscribe to the newsletter. We've even recently released a podcast where if you don't really want to even read that, now we do it in podcast form where you can listen to it on your way to work. So that is welcometothestreet.com. You guys can go check us out there. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. You can find me there. I guess I'll send that over to you. You can put that in the show description.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Vince.
Yeah, so I'm at I like Instagram the best, so I'm at Vince_WTS. Welcome to the street. Just I love the network too. So anybody that wants to chat, just hit me up and give me a follow. We'll talk on there, and we're always looking for guests for our podcast too. So subscribe to the newsletter, get a hold of us. Let's network and let's grow this thing.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
love it. Well, thank you, gents. Another fantastic conversation and many more to come, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Oftentimes, there's a lot of candidates that want to take the next step in the organization and promote. However, they find themselves at an impasse with where to start. Or they know where to start, but they know that there are so many different elements that are extremely arduous, challenging, and stressful to prepare for. I've prepared a guide because I want to help everyone, no matter what their confidence level is in public speaking or recognizing the different elements or how to show up your best way and highlight your leadership style. A lot of times those folks know exactly what it takes to be a leader because they do it at the line level. However, they are surpassed by those that simply test better, have the gift of the gab, whether or not they actually can put anything behind it, or they've taken the test so many times that they've slowly edged their way up that list and eventually may be in striking zone for a promotion. So if getting selected for the next rank is of interest to you, I highly recommend you do your homework and you recognize resources. And part of doing that homework and recognizing resources is the guide I've prepared. It hones in on a lot of my lessons learned from being on both sides of the table, testing as a sergeant. And although I got the nod in the first round, when I looked at the notes, there were a lot of things I misunderstood. There were a lot of things where I didn't present my best way. I was just fortunate that my total testing process was successful enough to get me in. And then for commander, doing that internal process and external process, seeing some dramatic differences, coming out on top of both processes. However, learning again, when I looked at the notes, there was so much that I left on the table or so much that I misrepresented myself or I didn't convey what I had intended to the assessor. So with all those lessons learned, breaking down the common test components, and also, arguably more importantly, how you identify, define, and prepare your own leadership philosophy that you can not only take into the test, but you can take into your day-to-day interactions with your team, your peers, your subordinates, and your leaders, right? Because leading up is a critical part of organizational development and culture as well. So for more on the guide, you can find it at bluegritwellness.com. That's the promotional guide at bluegritwellness.com/shop. And whether or not you are looking to promote, we all know those people that should be taking the next test that we keep nudging. And those people need to be empowered. They need to find confidence. And a lot of that can come from you just giving them that nod, giving them that support, that encouragement, and telling them where to find the guide. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.